Joker is a new comic book film based off of the Joker character. However, it's not based off of any source material written about the Joker before. It's not based on any comic book, really. It's really just taking the Joker character and placing it in a more realistic kind of tone of a film from Todd Phillips. And with that, the story is basically the psychological deep dive into this man named Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix. He's got a lot of mental health problems. He is in Gotham City in the year 1981, a time where things are pretty miserable there. Things are really tense. And it's basically about how this character starts to spiral downward into the Joker that we kind of all are familiar with, and the signs that kind of lead up to that, the steps to it, and how society around it kind of reacts to it. I don't want to give too much away about the movie's plot, so I'll just leave it at that. I will say, I was honestly a little skeptical at first hearing about this film, because all I heard beforehand was that it was going to be a Joker prequel, and I was like, okay, so Jared Leto, we're gonna find out how he became the Joker, this Joker, and I was like, I was not a big fan of his Joker in Suicide Squad anyway, so I really don't care. But when I found out that Todd Phillips had made the move to set this outside of the DC extended universe, whatever they're trying to do with that, I was like, okay, well, shoot, alright, this could be interesting. They cast Joaquin Phoenix, an actor who is a legend. He's done a lot of fantastic roles, and I was like, this is perfect. This role seems like practically perfect for a man like Joaquin Phoenix. He could probably do this really well. I was honestly getting really more hyped up to see this film after seeing the trailers, after hearing the positive buzz from all the film festivals. It won an award at the Venice Film Festival. Despite all the controversy surrounding this film and the security measures that were going to be in place at certain theaters because of fear of no safety there pretty much, I was still excited to see this film nonetheless on the big screen. I was really hyped up to see it, and I walked out really digging it. I thought this was a really well-made film. Todd Phillips, for a guy who has started off with a lot of raunchy comedies, the Hangover trilogy, recently War Dogs was more of a step in this direction. It's still a comedy film, but that's a little bit more darker than his usual films. He was already starting to make that transition from his past career of comedies into a movie like this, and I'm glad that he made this film because he had a really great idea of how to make this film look gorgeous, yet disgusting at the same time. That also is a credit to the cinematographer of this film, Lawrence Sher. He did a really great job filming this movie. There are so many fantastic shots that you see in this film that if you're a cinematographer, there's a lot to admire with how they set certain things up. And it's just a beautiful film to look at, despite the city, Gotham, and where Arthur Fleck lives, these towns, looking so disgusting. There are a couple moments where they'll go to sets that are shiny and new looking. It's like, okay, a breath of fresh air of something neat, but then as soon as they start going outside, it's like, oh, it's disgusting yet somehow beautiful looking Gotham City. I thought they did a really great job of crafting this world. I thought they also did a really great job with the screenplay because it is, first and foremost, a character study of this man, Arthur Fleck. It is his film, and Joaquin Phoenix, as expected, killed it, and still managed to surprise me with what he was able to give with this character as well. As they kind of mentioned earlier on, he has a lot of mental health problems. He's getting therapy based off of it. He has like 7 different medications, but as the plot continues and more things kind of start to escalate in this certain period of time, things kind of start to get worse and worse for this character, and you really do kind of at first root like, you don't have to be the Joker, you don't have to do this, but as it keeps going on and you still see these decisions being made that lead more and more to the Joker, you're almost kind of like, oh no, don't do this, Arthur Fleck. I honestly did kind of find myself rooting against him turning into the Joker, yet at the same time overall fascinated with the steps that he was taking to get there. There are a lot of things that he does in this movie that overall attribute to his main arc that are pretty bad, and you don't have to agree with it all. I'm not saying you have to root for him doing these bad things like, yeah, become the Joker, because I was honestly being like, oh no, this is bad, this is really awful. But of course, because the character is so fascinating and because Joaquin Phoenix played him so well, I was still really entranced by it overall. He is a really mesmerizing actor, and the fact that he got cast as the Joker was just perfect because he plays this character very well. He makes it his own. There's going to be a lot of comparisons like, is he better than Heath Ledger or not? I don't care. Me personally, I still like Heath Ledger's performance. I think everyone can have a favorite, but I think the comparison is a little unfair since Heath had a supporting role in The Dark Knight, whereas Joaquin Phoenix has this entire movie where he's able to set himself apart from past iterations of the Joker as well, which is another thing I have to mention with the writing. What I love so much about it not being based off of a particular Joker story before is that they're able to make something new with it. They created a character that is able to reflect a certain part of society here today. It works as its own commentary, a look at the mentally ill and the healthcare system that looks after it, and the society that kind of looks down on these people without even really thinking about it. But also there's another aspect of it that they're kind of pointing out that I thought was really fascinating, how someone who is mentally ill and not really doing anything for politics can somehow accidentally kind of start a whole political discussion when that really wasn't the case to begin with, and they just so happened to get associated with it by chance. I thought that also made the character and the story itself really fascinating, because as I said, they open this movie in a time where things are tense and kind of miserable. Then you just throw in this mentally ill character that is doing things for their own personal reasons, but then you have this reaction to some of the things that he does, that it all of a sudden sparks something that wasn't even the intention of the character to begin with, but now he is just associated with it, and seeing where that kind of leads, I thought was really great, and I really liked the direction they took with that. Once again, I think Todd Phillips did a really great job setting up this whole world. I also really like the echoes of how Arthur Fleck was raised in this film by his mother, Frances Conroy. I really like her as an actress. I like her in American Horror Story whenever she shows up in that, and you really do see why he kind of is the way he is through how she is acting right now, and even that I thought was really fascinating. And you're kind of like, well, I really don't want Arthur Fleck to become this bad guy, but it almost seems inevitable because of how he was treated before. Maybe nothing will help this guy at this point, considering the world he's kind of living in right now too. The people surrounding him and how they're treating him and disregarding him instantly without even really considering the mental conditions that he could have. There are certain ways where this movie gets you inside the head of Arthur Fleck in certain scenes that I thought were really genius, because you really can kind of relate to some of the things that he does. Like sometimes he'll fantasize about how he envisions life should go for him, how he pictures people on the TV will react around him, and I think everyone can kind of relate to that. I think we all have had kind of moments where we're kind of thinking like, man, if only we could get famous by, and you do start fantasizing something that'll never happen, but man, wouldn't that be great? And you kind of get that in this movie with him, but because of his mental condition, it shows how it kind of grows into something other than just a fantasy, a dream. It's something that is real and personal to him. There's something he does with his laugh as well that I was honestly chilled by. It's not just, oh, I'm laughing just for the sake of laughing. It's an actual condition. They actually use an actual condition where people just have fits of laughter for no real reason at the most inappropriate times, but they can't help it. And they give him that in this movie to work with. And I thought even that was chilling, the way Joaquin Phoenix at times, he was doing that thing where you laugh a lot and you kind of like, you're running out of breath and you're just kind of doing like a ha ha, and it kind of drags on a little bit, but then he starts laughing even more, like you can tell it's painful, but he's still going. And it was like, oh God, I would give anything to have this man stop laughing right now, but I know he can't control it. Overall, I think they crafted a really fascinating look at an origin story for the Joker, which at first seemed really unnecessary because a lot of the fun of the Joker character is the mystery of his origins. Like in The Dark Knight, he tells like two completely different backstories in that movie about how he got his scars, but that's what makes that character so fun and interesting, is the mystery of it. I read somewhere there was a comic where he said like, I prefer to have my backstory be like multiple choice, something like that. I don't know the exact thing, but I really like that about the Joker character. But given what this film is trying to convey with what their message is to the audience, I liked how they crafted his origin story in this film, because it's not really a typical origin story. I know it's obviously it's a villain origin story, so it's already not the typical story, but it's not something that grows into something bigger. There's like a big over-the-top Joker action scene that you'd see in The Dark Knight. It's not something like that. It's treated much more real. As certain things do kind of vamp up, but it's grounded in this grit and reality that will upset certain people. I can definitely see this movie upsetting certain general audience members. I don't think it's as violent as other movies that I've seen, but there will be certain people that wanted to just see a plain comic book movie, and they're not going to get that with this one. If you think Joker is going to be like Venom, as far as making a villain and giving them their own movie, definitely not this. Keep the kids away. Unless you think they're ready to see something like this, then sure, go ahead. It's not really all that bad, but it is kind of violent. Not as violent as people are making it out to be, but it can go there, and I thought they utilized it well, though. I thought they did a good job with what they were doing. It's not just violence for the sake of violence. It seemed like everything had a point. Because this isn't a character that anyone is really condoning. You're watching him and you're studying him. It is a character study movie, but at no point are they like, this is what was obviously supposed to happen. The Joker is a character that points out what's wrong with society and does things in a very cruel, violent way. So it made sense to the Joker character for me, how this movie played out. And though you're never condoning him, he is saying certain things that you can ponder. Just you hate the way that he's kind of going about it because he is a villain. I do have a couple issues with this movie. First of all, Zazie Beetz is in this film, and she's a great actress. I really enjoy her. And when she showed up in this film, I understand what she's supposed to mean to Arthur Fleck's character. I get the very basic idea of it, but whenever they cut to her, there just wasn't enough meat to those scenes with her. To the point where literally at one point I was like, oh, this is going to eventually be this, bet? And then it was, and then it just kind of ended and they didn't do anything else with it. I would have been fine if it was like, I called it, but hey, it led to something that, whew, but it kind of didn't. It just kind of stopped. So I was like, well, I called it, and then you just didn't really do that much with it except point out the obvious about this character. I can't hate it because I like the idea that it's bringing up, but it didn't really seem like you did anything with it, and it didn't really give this actress much to do, who is a great actress, but she doesn't have all that much here, and when she's dropped, that's it. You don't see her anymore. Also, I think we needed a little bit more time with Robert De Niro. He is really fun. As a talk show host in this movie, he plays it really, really well. But without spoiling anything, I think they just needed to show a little behind the scenes of that show. I know this is supposed to be entirely from Arthur Fleck's perspective. It is a character study of him, so maybe they were trying to not cut to other characters' perspectives during this time. But when him and his show suddenly decide to do something, I felt like there needed to be a little bit more there because I could get the basic idea of it once again, like I said with Zazie Beetz. I get the very basic idea of what they're trying to bring up with this. But because there's a little meat to it, it doesn't really feel all that earned. So there are just a couple things that I felt were a little rushed in the screenplay that could have used a little bit more time to properly develop and give more substance to. Overall, I really did enjoy this film. It's not going to be for everyone. It is very grounded in realism, though it's not as violent as other films out there because of that realism element that Todd Phillips brought to his direction. It can be disturbing to certain people that are expecting to see one movie, but then they don't. I don't know why you would expect to see a different kind of movie going into this, but I'm not the general public. I can't really speak for that. But overall, if you want to see an interesting character study on the Joker, if you want to see a movie that is well made, that is well shot, well acted, well scored, I can't pronounce the woman's name, I'm so sorry, but she created a fantastically haunting score for this film that I was entranced by listening to. This is overall just a really mesmerizing movie that I think has a lot to say, and I think is something interesting to be pondered over. I'm gonna give Joker an A-, though I do think it has some issues with the screenplay overall. I really did overall like what they did with writing this character, with this character study. I really enjoyed Joaquin Phoenix's performance. It's one of the best of the year, no question. He is a legend for a reason. Giving him this character was just the absolute right choice. And Todd Phillips, I hope he makes more movies like this. I know that he's kind of complained that he can't make comedies like he used to recently. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that, but I'm honestly more interested to see him make more movies kind of like this anyway. So I mean, I thought he did a really good job with this. If you've seen Joker, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.